think it's working.
And I believe we are live right now. Could someone type something if anyone's listening? If anybody's listening. Could someone... Okay, we have one viewer. That might be me on my other computer. Okay, well...
Let's just have our talk.
we have 3 people on right now. That's exciting. All right. Hello, Monica. How are you? My beautiful wife. All right, let's get this.
What's that number down there?
That's the chat. That's how popular I am. Okay, let's hit record. People. Hey guys. Hey Kelsey, how are you?
Hey,
Thanks for tuning in. And I'm trying to pull up Capital. I'm trying to pull up it on my other computer, so bear with us. I'm still kind of new at doing this.
This is round 2.
This is round 2. The first one was Mark Ryan. So let's go ahead and get this going. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, all 4 of you that are watching right now. Welcome to a live Round the Rotary with me, JP Warren, your host. And with us today, we have one of my best friends in the world. I think we just defined universe. Forgive me. Mr. Jason Churchill, CEO at PetroLegacy. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yeah, actually did.
All right, good. And I guess to get this kicked off, I want to say hello to Evelyn, my beautiful 72-month-old daughter that's watching right now. Hello, honey. And I guess let's just kick this off. The purpose of this is kind of we're in Austin. Jason, thank you for taking the time out of your day to meet with us and be on Round the Rotary. We actually did a previous recording of Round the Rotary that we're going to launch. However, we just decided why not just do a live one, see where it goes, try to get some audience-generated questions and discussion points. And we have a couple pretty good ones. And stick around because we're going to be doing a live Q&A. So if those that want to ask us a question, go ahead and type that into the little whatever it's called these days, and we'll go from there. So Jason, why don't you give us a little brief background? Don't get too far into it because, again, on our previous recorded podcast, we discussed it. So why don't you kick us off a little bit?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying thanks for doing this. It's kind of fun. As I said, this is a first for me, so I'm excited to sit down and just talk a little bit about what's going on. But about me, just real quickly, I've been in the industry for almost 20 years. I've started my career on the large public side working for ExxonMobil. Spent about 5 years there, moved into a 5-year term with XTO Energy, so experienced on the large public side. Got into the private equity space a little over almost 10 years ago, and have been there ever since. So it's been a wild transition. I've seen a lot change, and so I'm excited to be here to talk about what that's been like and what we're seeing today, and from where I sit, what I see tomorrow is going to bring. So a lot of unknowns, but it's going to be fun to talk about it.
It is an interesting time in our not just our industry, but the world in general right now. But I think we're obviously going to discuss the oil and gas industry as that's kind of what pertains to us and also to our viewers. So let's kind of dive into that. And again, this, for those that are just tuning in right now, this is a very informal discussion. It's going to be pretty much just kind of audience-generated discussion points that we got previously, and also a Q&A at the end. So we have a couple ones that were previously sent in. And the first one, to kind of kick us off, it's me, JP Warren, that came up, the VP of Sales and Marketing at Capital Petroleum Consultants, who provides well site supervision and project engineering work, podcast host, father, and husband. You made a post yesterday or 2 days ago discussing that you're going to be on Round the Rotary.
My first post ever.
Was it really?
Very first.
Okay, a lot of good positive feedback from that. And you mentioned that you've been trying to do like many new things over the past 90 days. I guess that's when kind of the floor fell out and the world stopped. Yeah, pretty much. And you said that you've been doing many new things, a lot of first things. Can you provide us some examples about what new things that you've been doing, either professionally or personally?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a great question. Go on.
Yeah, I'll start off with the personal because it's probably more fun and relatable. But, we've been in this for 90 days, if you will, just say going back into March, beginning of March, and it just, a lot of those firsts, like they're not chosen. I've heard it said like you don't change, and there's two circumstances where you change: when you want to and when you have to. And these have all probably been have tos, like on the personal level, like raising kids in the middle of quarantine. That's been just wild. This all started like it was kind of the week of spring break for us, and it feels like spring break just never ended. And this environment we're in right now, where it's loosened up now, but I mean, a lot of y'all are probably in the same position where you've got kids from home. You're now trying to homeschool. Kids are out of homeschool now, but trying to homeschool, trying to get exercise, trying to work at home. Just everybody's routines being thrown out the window. Right. So it was kind of a first, and I think one thing that I've definitely adapted to is, growing up, I was used to being told like, hey, just go outside. Like you need to go get outside. Well, we kind of couldn't do that.
Yeah.
For like 2 months, and you had this dichotomy of wanting to get your kids out and
tire them,
get some energy out,
yeah,
and get them off the screens because you want to monitor or manage screen time. Well, it was like there was nothing to do, so it was just kind of weird, like living that out. Of course, we've found a little bit better balance with that now. So that was a first. I think another first for me, which is kind of cool. Like I'm now way into the stand-up desk. I was a late adopter, but now I use a stand-up desk. I use it all the time. So if you haven't tried it, give it a try. But I found that just sitting uninterrupted for 4 or 5 hours, like I'm getting old now, and that just started to hurt my back. So that's been an interesting first for me.
Thank you for exposing that vulnerability, because I think that's very brave of you to discuss that you were late adapter at the stand-up desk.
I was a late one, and I was vocally against it for quite some time, but it's actually been pretty nice.
So what about the professional side of things? I mean, what new things have you kind of taken a leap at and gotten into, or tried and struck out?
Well, look, our whole industry has been thrown. Well, our whole lives have been thrown upside down, but in our industry, all of you tuning in, can relate. But just the first time I've ever intentionally shut down producing productive wells. The pricing pandemic, the fallout that occurred late April, coming into May, the pricing just didn't compel us to continue to produce our barrels, with the strip or the curve and future pricing being more attractive than it was today, so to speak. Just the first in my career, like how do you manage a producing field, shutting it down and bringing it back online? Like pretty wild.
Yeah.
That was an absolute first. And I think how we will manage our field going on from there will be that's going to be new. Like we're kind of writing the textbook on how to manage a crisis like this.
And you mentioned something that we were discussing before. It's having the profit mindset.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot to go into there, but I think that adapting from a mentality of growth for the sake of growth because that was the best way to add value, turning into an environment where we're focused on profit first. I like to just say profit first. Like every decision that we make has to be made a little bit differently. And there's some questions that have been submitted, and we can talk a little bit more in depth. But that's been we're living out that adaptation right now.
Right. And a couple questions that we just got right now. Chase Hanna with Rosewood said no coordinating wardrobe. That is from so Jason's been my toga partner for the past 7 years now. Toga's not around this year because of COVID and all that, but it's coming back strong. We usually coordinate our outfits. But Chase, I was calling you last Friday to actually discuss that, but you didn't pick up, nor did you call me back. So couldn't tell you about this before it happened. The next one was from Ed Squirreljack. Are y'all 6 feet apart? No, not even. Very close. Good question, though. Very strong question, Ed. Thank you. The next question we're going to go into right now is from Corey Parrott, the Vice President of Operations at Broad Oak Energy.
Yeah.
He is a long-time listener, first-time caller, as he said, and he said he's the #1 fan of this podcast. So let's get into
Way to
this.
go, Corey.
Yeah, way to go, Corey.
Yeah.
Proud of you. Will the private equity companies that traditionally invest in the E&P sector remain committed to doing so?
Yeah, so I think that just like on the operational side, we're seeing changes in how companies manage the assets that they have and how they grow and go add value. Like the private equity space, the private equity portfolio or private equity funds, they're adapting as well. And you see some that are adapting well. There's a lot of consolidation that's taking place.
Right.
Both within basins and in between basins, reshuffling of the portfolios so that the assets can be put into a position to be more profitable and have a longer runway. I think there's private equity groups out there that will continue to stand behind the upstream E&P space. INCAP, our partner, being one of those. There's a lot of capital available to them. Yet to put to work. They're continuing to see this as an environment where the assets that they have, they want to protect and continue to invest through the drill bit, so they'll be able to invest in that manner in ways that are more profitable than they were before. And I think that new opportunities stand out there. I think it's early. Like patience is the word I've heard from a lot of people. There are things to look at right now, but they're just not in the position where, if they're over levered companies or there's debt situations, distress, that takes time to work through. So I think it's kind of like back in 2008 during the financial crisis, when in the housing market, when if you had run out and tried to buy those properties before they went through a process, you wouldn't have been able to get your hands on them. Even if you could, you would have paid a price that was above what it needed to transact at for value to be created from there. So, yeah, I think private equity will remain committed to this space, but I think they adapt in the type of assets that they're investing and how they will glean value out of those assets instead of kind of a drill and flip model. What I think the mentality that will be had and will be successful from here is when you acquire an asset, your plan is to own it into perpetuity and not with the intent of exiting. You probably will get the chance to exit at some point, but the way you will create value is through developing that or maintaining that asset and spewing off cash flow.
Versus just as you said, punch a couple holes in the ground and flip it for 3-4 times whatever the value is. We're definitely not in that environment anymore. I don't think we have been in that environment since 2017, 2018.
Yeah, that's about right. It really started to shift in beginning of 18, 19. It was
That's what I said.
pretty clear. Institutional investors really began to claw back on the capital they were providing to public companies to grow and add to their inventory, their asset base, and really we're asking the industry to shift to an environment where you could create profit and sustainable profit, lower growth rates, and provide through dividends or other manner returns back to those investors. So that's just trickled down, and I think what's happened in the next that trickled down over 2019. The M&A market sort of began to fall apart, and then obviously with what's happened in the last 90 days, like that environment is super challenged. There's no capital available for that old private equity model, and so private equity has an opportunity. I believe private capital has an opportunity, almost generational type opportunity to create value where you can operate and you can create profit from an asset or create a business.
Right. And then another question that he had was, how will the growing concern of stigma attached to climate change impact the private equity model, do you think?
I think it already has. There are a couple. I think Quantum, they raised a small fund, I think maybe $500 million, just dedicated to technology. And they had made some investments back in 18 and 19. More recently, NCAP themselves raised about, I think it was $1.5 billion in a new fund completely dedicated to renewables. wind, solar, and natural gas with low cost technology, battery power. And so I think that you've seen the private equity side of the business begin to shape themselves for this new world. They haven't given up the approach or the upstream E&P investment
Right.
Methodology, but they've adapted and prepared themselves for the future. But look, with climate change, it's my belief, it's here. It's a real viewpoint that is legitimate, and I think what we need to do, what I try to do, is recognize that it's a bit like a religion. Like I find that the conversations I've had where I try to challenge beliefs, those are the most frustrating conversations for me and for anybody I'm talking to.
It's like arguing your favorite color.
Yeah, or arguing beliefs is like, that's not a super productive conversation to have. And so I think what I've learned has to be more valuable is to try to understand those viewpoints, but then also educate a little bit and talk a little bit about what I'm doing to provide energy and meet the world's energy needs in an environment that's changing. Like renewables are a fast-growing part of the supply of energy to the world. Still very small in comparison to fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. That's going to continue to change, but what I try to help some of those people understand is that the world does need energy. And as you take fossil fuels off the table, if that's the belief of the religion, like clean energy,
Right.
It really has a drastic impact on the ability to provide a lifestyle to people across the globe, particularly in third world countries where the cost of implementing some of the renewable energy supply doesn't compete with the the transportability of fossil fuels. It's just it's a lot more cost effective up front in those developing countries. So you take that off the table and we stop providing that to the globe. It has a very, I think, far-reaching impacts on medical care, healthcare, sustainability in harsh climates, energy supply for climate control. It's not just about transportation.
No, it's
driving
not.
Cars.
And that's the thing. You saw a lot of people on when this happened, when oil kind of got kicked to the ground, the oil and gas got kicked to the ground. A lot of people were saying, the mass, these N95 masks. I mean, 80% of that or something like that. Honestly, 80% of statistics are made up on the spot. But
Yeah.
I feel like there's a large, whether it's, as you said, medical, every industry, and there's so many products out there that people don't realize what hydrocarbons are in. And that's definitely a point that you're trying. And you talked about something before we got on about this 13 to 16%. Yeah, bring that up, please. I think it's interesting.
And there's a great book. Many people have read it, but Epstein's book, "The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels," like that's just a wildly transparent read. I think for anybody in the industry or anybody outside of it to start to understand and be able to have a conversation around this. And some of the facts that are thrown around in there over the last 20 years. So if you go back to 2000, the percentage of energy supplied by renewables, I think, was around 13%.
Right.
20 years later, today, I read that stands somewhere around 16 or 17%. So
in 20 years, it only gained 3%, 4%
of the global
Right.
energy supply. Like it grew substantially, but the amount of energy consumption, like, look, we're making more people every day.
Right.
There are people demanding a better quality of life every day. So energy consumption is going up. The rate of increase is slowing because of renewables and because of technology. But all that said, let's just say for argument's sake that over the next 20 years it doubles. That would mean, if my math is right on the spot, in 2040, renewables could supply 25% of the energy's consumption. Now, we'd have to go run some models, and or people will probably run those models to see like what the total energy consumption looks like 20 years from now. But all that to say, fossil fuels are a big part of providing energy to the world, and I think all forms: wind, solar, nuclear, or nuclear, whichever one you choose. Hydro. Those are all resources that I think we need to tap into to be part of like a melting pot of decarbonizing our energy supply.
Right.
They're all going to play a role.
Okay. Andrew Taylor with Callan asked, how do you keep your employees engaged in a down market? And whatever market, you want to call this down, depressed, miserable, whatever market you want to call it right now, how do you keep your employees engaged?
I mean, shoot, that's another first. That's a great question. Like, I'll admit to everybody, the day that we realized we needed to send everybody home from the office and we were all going to work remotely, we'd never done that before. We had people, from time to time, those hard workers that are always plugged in, they're set up at home, but we had a lot of people that had never worked from their house. So I had a lot of anxiety about it, to be totally clear, but I've been wildly surprised at how many resources are. Everybody knows Zoom, everybody knows Slack, these tools that are out there. But we've embraced them now, and we've tried different things that haven't worked, but those tools, Zoom and Slack, stick out really well. We have different channels on Slack. That we've got a channel for remote work. We've got a channel for what are you eating tonight? We've got different channels to just have conversations and sort of routinely engage with them. But what I have found most effective personally is if I'm driving down the street and someone pops into my mind, I call them. Yeah. And I talk to them. I'll call up Stephen Seacrest and just say, hey, how you doing? He runs all of our subsurface, and he's a brilliant individual. And I love chatting with him, but over the last 3 months, we just kind of lose that connectivity. So I find just reaching out to people and talking to them, and I love when people call me. Yeah. Just, hey, what's going on? We have routine meetings, but I like having one-on-one conversations to just engage with everybody.
It's easy to lose contact in this environment, but it's also really easy to engage with people. It just takes that added step. I mean, in the mornings, I'll do these little walk and talks where I'll just, put some headphones on, get my phone. I'll just start calling random people and just talking to them and just kind of seeing where they're at and kind of what they're feeling, just kind of, because you're not seeing these people anymore at breakfast runs, lunches, meetings, or anything like that. So these little walk and talks have been beneficial, but not just engaged. Let's get into that a little more. I mean, how do you keep your employees motivated during times like this?
Well, I'm a big believer in transparency. That's kind of our religion around here. It has been at times, and I go to the numbers. When this first started, the day that the price war began between OPEC and Russia, or Saudis and Russia, I guess, the day that started, we sat everybody down in this room, and I said, look, I don't know what this is going to turn into, but here's what it could turn into. And we talked really high level. We hadn't run any models or anything at that point, no financials, but we started to talk about the implications on our drilling program, the implications on our profitability, liquidity for the company, just very transparent. So I find, to Andrew's question's a great one. Like, I find people get engaged when they have information. In the absence of information, they're left to the
They come up with their own stuff.
It's left to their imagination.
Anxiety. Yeah. I completely agree with that. Go on. If you're
No, I'll stop there.
So transparency. So just
transparency.
Be open and honest with your employees. So you just talked about OPEC and Russia. And interestingly enough, we have a question from one of my buddies when I was working over in Saudi, Ahmed Al-Khadib, who's the VP of Oilfield Division at Wabi Holding Group. And this is kind of on a global scale. So his question, he has two questions. How the future will look like if the oil production prices are hammered every time the U.S. starts producing and reaches 20 million barrels production per day, which slashes the prices down and forces OPEC to react badly.
Yeah, that's an interesting and broad
I don't feel like
question
these
there.
questions are being asked though. I mean, I think this is a great outside set
I
of
think it's a
eyes.
very real time question.
Yeah,
And to be clear, I think it may have meant 12 million barrels a day. Like in March, I think we got to almost 13 million barrels a day before the the production started pulling back. People started curtailing, slowing down drilling. Um, and just to give everybody context, before going back to like 2010, I think we were producing around 5 million barrels a day out of this country.
right.
And then technology changed that. We were able to drive production growth out of the U.S. in a way that I haven't seen in my career. So to answer the question directly, though, I think that doing so, America took away the control that OPEC had been able to exert for such a long time, and took control of that. I call it the marginal barrel, like providing the supply for that last bit of demand, and then, quite frankly, finding that we're oversupplying it. And that's just the product of excess capital. A lot of capital came into the environment because of the technology change of hydraulic fracturing, our ability to space these wells, co-develop, um, larger completions, just drive more and more productivity out of the wells. Because of the excess of capital, we really weren't sure that all those barrels were being provided profitably.
Right.
At $100 oil, that's one thing. At $50 oil, that's a completely different math problem. So it's my hypothesis that the U.S. will pull back, and this is not my hypothesis. This is what everybody's believing at this point. We've pulled back on production. We've shut wells in. I think we lost 2 million barrels a day of production in May. So instead of 12, we were down at 10. I haven't seen that. I'm not certain of that number. That's kind of what I'm hearing. I think what comes back now is wells get turned back on and duck wells start to come into the mix and brought online. That we probably get back maybe 11 million barrels a day or some more. But what we'll see is the amount of investment in drill bit is gone. It's not what it was, and it will not come back to what it was. So going forward, we'll see that the profitable production available from U.S. shale will look different. Because of that, I don't think that we will be able to wildly oversupply the market. The capital won't be there to do it. Quite frankly,
So it'll be kind of a self-check.
it's a self-check,
Right.
But that's the beauty of the open market. And what I love about it, I don't think that being part of OPEC is a necessity. I think for the balance of supply and demand, but I think it will come out of the self-check of the open market.
Now, that was kind of the second question because, well, why not just join OPEC Plus and regulating the production without joining OPEC, but follow kind of what Russia's doing, as this will keep the prices in check and maintain a healthy industry environment.
Yeah, I quite frankly, I think that goes against the very foundation of having an open market, and what our country is founded on. I think it takes away some of the freedoms of innovation. Look, innovation will come in in America's desire to find that balancing. There's going to be innovation. In a controlled market, you starve it. You cannot have control and innovation at the same time. I think that those two are, generally speaking,
against each other.
mutually exclusive.
Right.
So I'm very afraid of a controlled market because it takes away the initiative to innovate.
Try something new.
Yeah,
Right.
so I think that we'll get there without having to become part of that cartel.
All right. Well, that's good. Good insight. The next question is from J.P. Warren, the VP of Sales and Marketing at Capital Trunk Consultants, well site supervision and project engineering. I want to hear what you have to say to people in the oil field. We kind of broke this down before when we went over the questions. What would you say to people in the oil field, I had 15 and 20-year people out there, 10 to 15, 5 to 10 below 5. So pretty much kind of what would you, I mean, you put them into two brackets, but what would you tell people, I guess, 7+ years in the industry and below that, or actually even within a year? Like what advice would you give out to people, and would that advice be different for different groups?
Yeah, I think it's where you draw those lines, and in my head, where I draw the lines between the buckets are, look, I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. That's a good bit of time, but I can go back to the time that was pre-shale, before unconventional development. Not a whole lot of time, but I had a small window there back in my drilling days with Exxon, where I worked in an environment that was about every dollar mattered.
Right.
And we were, in essence, the culture was required of us to look at every dollar we were spending and think, do I have to spend that dollar? It's been, look, I don't want to act like we don't protect our capital in any way, but as we have gotten busier and busier over the last 5-10 years, there's just a culture that has been lost, in a curiosity that has been lost in digging into those details and really understanding what we're doing in the field and where the dollars are going. So I kind of draw that line where do you have experience in this industry that is outside of, say, the last 15 years of unconventional shale development? Because the capital availability and the transactional structure of that time frame is very different from the 40 or 50 years before that. Is that fair?
No,
so I
that's
put people in those two buckets. So I'd say, if you're, say, 5 years in, and all you've known is the environment that we just came out of, I think that you have to go back and sit down and say, what did I go to school for? What have I been working on? What skills have I developed? Like, what's my plan from here? What do I want to accomplish? And I think that with that plan in place, you can begin to start chasing, what does that goal look like? And that might mean you find some mentors that have been there and done that. That might mean that you have to go stretch your network and meet some of those folks that have done what you want to do.
right.
For those of us that have been in it for a little while, I really think it's all about adaptation. Like, it's time for us to adapt the way that we're getting oil out of the ground, the way that we're getting oil to markets, the way that we're drilling and completing, and investigate down to the steps within the processes to see are there things that we can change to take expenses off the table, and make us more profitable. So that's a very, I think, broad brush approach, but I kind of see people in those two buckets.
But also, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, everyone's talking about adapting right now. Everyone's talking about doing something new, and I think we've beaten this down over the past several podcasts. But it's not just as an operator or E&P company. I think this actually resonates towards service companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what can you do differently? Because the environment that we were in, 90+ days ago was no longer.
Right.
Especially being in sales. I mean, sales people do breakfast runs, lunches, lunch and learns, meetings. You can't get inside an operator's office anymore. So it is being adapted. It's thinking how to kind of think outside the box, and how do I meet someone that I can't walk in their office and meet?
Mm-hmm.
How do I establish a relationship there? And that's just stretching your networks, utilizing networks, and just trying to think differently. One question we have here that Marty Unruh had to go into, the Universal Pressure Company, had to go into a meeting. Also previous guest on Round the Rotary. What should frac companies do to truly be a partner? What should they be focused on in the future to stay relevant?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. Look, the well cost has changed dramatically over the last year. Really, frac prices have come down quite a lot. There's been a lot of pressure there. I think it's tough on the service side. I think that it doesn't do the industry benefit to just slash pricing. I think that we need to spend time on location together and understand through that full supply chain, chemicals, fluid, proppant, horsepower, and people. How do we restructure the way that we execute that operation? Because the fundamental need is to stimulate the well. And there needs to be a mechanism for people to create value and profit for themselves on the service side and the E&P side. So I can't say that I sit here and have a direct answer to that question, Marty, but what I do think is there is value to be created in sitting down together as partners and solving that problem as a one.
Okay.
So
and that kind of segues into this. I know you kind of spoke to it already, but a lot of people have kind of messaged me and said, "How come ask Jason why he's not using us exclusively, or how can we, how do we get on location, or did all that?" So that being said, I think that's kind of a good question. I mean, does this new market change the way you look at service providers, and if so, I mean, how, what will we be looking at moving forward?
yeah, I think that it doesn't break the relationship. It does change it though. I think that there's so much focus right now on bottom line, profit margin,
Right.
that we as operators, we're starting there. And I think for someone looking to break into a new relationship, I think you have to differentiate yourself. And I think it's twofold. Like, we as operators, we have to be looking for those solutions also. Because just doing what we have done doesn't innovate. We don't create more value by repeating what we've done.
You can't go raise capital either walking in the offices saying, "Oh, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing for the past 5 years." It's not going to work anymore.
Yeah. So, one great example I would share is on the production operations side of things. We have lease operations. We've got roustabout, water hauling, chemicals. There's a lot of line items that go into that. But recently, through LinkedIn, I was made a connection with a group called Engage, and Kayla reached out to me. She more or less cold called me, but the way that she introduced it was, I think, very helpful, because I was able to real quickly understand what they were doing for other operators, and it really matched up, because that was it's a technology approach that I was looking for. I just had not yet found. And
did you know you were looking for that, or was
I was actively looking for it? So that's what I'm kind of describing. Like, there's two sides to the coin. It's not just the service provider reaching out and trying to make that connection. We need to be looking for those connections. But she found me before I found her. Right. So hats off to her. But the way that she introduced the Engage technology and what they were working on and attempting and having success with other operators, I saw, okay, that has the potential to directly impact the bottom line. We connected. We real quickly got into a Zoom meeting with the right people, and we're in the middle of implementing that tool. There are other service providers out there that I know we need to be talking to approach what we're doing every day differently. Right. And that will be true on the drilling and completion side, and we'll get back to that as well. So, Marty, I definitely think we should sit down, me and Cole, and we should talk about how do we set up that next job to approach it differently and make it more profitable for both parties.
I like that, kind of like a brainstorm.
Yeah, totally.
So that woman that reached out to you is kind of how my wife and I met. She reached out to me before I could find her.
You were looking for her, but she found you.
Exactly, that's how it works. Do you have any messages that you'd like to provide anyone that's watching right now, or watching, I guess, in the future?
Yeah, I think, what I would share is, I think over communication matters more than anything right now. And sometimes that's tough for me. That's not always my nature. But I think if it comes into your mind to talk to somebody, pick up the phone. Yeah. Don't wait. Don't let that thought fade, because too many times I've called somebody and really been obvious to me that they've been looking to connect.
Yeah.
So I would say over communicate. I would also say patience. I've heard that from the other E&P companies, public, private, that I've talked to, being patient with working through this crisis, so that we can come out of this crisis and solve it. I've heard it from the financial providers. I've heard it from the institutional investors. Like, this is going to take time.
Yeah.
I would say through the worst parts of this crisis, when we were looking at the unfortunate situation of, are we going to have to reduce our staff? Are we going to have to shut in wells? Are we going to have our borrowing capacity redetermined and have to pay down debt? Solving all this simultaneously, what I found is focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
I summed it up like this for myself and for others. I say, like, solve today's problem and then get ready for tomorrow. Because it's coming, and you know it's coming. Focus on today.
You can't waste your energy thinking about stuff that's out of your control.
That's right.
I mean, OPEC and Russia not coming, you can't focus on that because you have no impact or influence over that.
Mm-hmm. We got to control what's going on within our business.
Exactly.
For sure. And I would just say, like, for the private equity world, people listening out there, if you're in it, you're feeling it, or if you've been around it, you're curious about it, there will be a generational type opportunities come out of it, but it will take time. So that patience for it, like, play out all over the place.
And just as you said, communicate. Because a lot of times you have in your mind to call someone or reach out to someone, and that usually the motivation fades.
Yeah, it does.
So just pick up the phone and do it right there.
Yeah. Or even text.
Yeah, stay in front of people, stay in people's minds. So, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to type in? Currently, we'll give this a couple minutes, see if anyone has anything to say. I guess we're dropping. We got 9. Okay, I guess in the meantime, I'd like to plug Capital Petroleum Consultants, who's the sponsor of this Round the Rotary, and for any well site supervisions that you may need, whether drilling, completions, productions, or any project engineering management, feel free to reach out to me or go to our page, capitalpetroleumconsultants.com. I believe, is anyone typing anything right now? Let's see if I missed anything. And we're going to wrap it up in 5, 4, 3. It has been good. Jason, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and for doing this at your office in PetroLegacy's office in Bee Cave. I appreciate it, and thank you for everyone that joined us. I see a lot of good friends and family joining us on this, and people that I haven't seen. So we appreciate it, and thanks again. And we hope everyone has a good day and stay safe. And that's it.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Yep, end it.